Hi, I'm Russell Hassan. Today I am going to be talking about my favorite comic book series, which is ElfQuest, as part of my series of YouTube videos called So Much Fandom. This is the graphic novel of ElfQuest Volume 1. Let me also show you ElfQuest Volume 2, and there are a lot of these. So let me tell you about ElfQuest. So ElfQuest was originally created like in the 1970s, and it became very popular. It was one of the first like indie comic books before Dark Horse or anything like that. And it was very popular in the 80s and the 90s, and then towards the 2000s, it sort of started to fade in popularity. And now, these days, it's sort of like a cult classic. So if you're an ElfQuest fan, you know about ElfQuest. But if you're not an ElfQuest fan, you may not know about ElfQuest. And so, what makes ElfQuest special, and why should you read these comic books? So, the interesting thing about ElfQuest, and the main point that I want to make today, is that when you think about comic books, you think about, DC, like Superman and Batman, or like Marvel Comics and Spider-Man. The interesting thing is that when you really stop and think about it, most comic books are science fiction or science fantasy, like a blend of science fiction and fantasy. But the interesting thing about ElfQuest and what made these comic books sort of unique is that this is high fantasy. This is it's a story about a group of elves and who live in a fantasy world, and it's really pure high fantasy with no elements of science fiction. And so, for the true fan of the fantasy genre, these comic books are a real treat to read. And so, for these comic books, I give them a 5-star review, and you really have to go out and read them if you haven't already. They're really like famous in the history of the fantasy genre, although many people these days don't really know about them. And so, if you haven't read them, you're really missing out. And so, let me show you like some of the like artwork. It's really like well done. Like the artwork is absolutely incredible, and the artist has talked about the fact that one of her early influences was Japanese comic books and manga and anime, and this back in the 1970s for an American artist to be influenced by manga was sort of revolutionary. The other thing is that the lead artist is a woman who, back in the 1970s, for a woman to be active in the fantasy and science fiction movement, which was male dominated basically, was also sort of revolutionary. So for ElfQuest, there are a lot of things to love about this series, and I highly recommend it, and you need to go check it out and read it. Thank you.